Okay, so we're gonna do something a little bit different today, and we're gonna work on some documentation because I was tagged in this pull request to review some of the docs, and I wanted to show something I was working on just to get docs working, or just to get docs to us to be able to to preview the documentation locally. I was working on a little module to do that, so we'll explore that too. Before we get started, okay, so yeah, before we get started, let me pull up. Update quick start examples. This was the one. So I basically just want to look at this and just walk through the example quick start, or the proposed new example quick start. But before we do that, I wanted to just pull up. I was working on some doc modules before, and let's also get one more thing just in case. Okay, that's not what I wanted to do. I'm really confused on how any of this stuff is supposed to work. Just in case, put this up here. Today might be the day. So that'll be there. This will be here. The docs will be there. And I'll go into my Dagger repo. And I had a branch. That was doing like some stuff with the docs. I had this module called QA, and what it was doing was basically, oh yeah, so this was the one that was trying to run some test cases from the docs, which is different than the thing I was going to show. Sorry, I'm just going to find the thing I'm talking about. Oh, okay. Is this it? Yeah, test docs. Okay, cool. So I had this thing that I was running where it was basically going through and running all the test cases that currently existed in the quick start just to do some basic QA. And I also had this, which was gonna grab oh gosh, this is still not what I wanted, is it? Yeah, I think this is different than the thing I was thinking about. The thing that I was thinking about is basically a thing that helped me run the docs locally without having to install any additional dependencies. So let me go back out and see what that might be. All right, well, maybe we could just start over and just like do this from scratch instead. Okay, so maybe we could just start over. And specifically, why don't we first go and pull this branch in. But I honestly don't like really know how to do this properly. Because like this is like a branch. I wonder if I add his fork as a remote. It's probably the best way to do this. Oh, I already have Victim Dagger. Cool. So then I can check out. Hmm? Does that work? I'm in a detached state, which doesn't seem like what I want to be. But this looks like it's the latest. Okay, so the thing that I was going to talk about was if we open this up here, what I want to do is just run the docs locally. And the way we do that is inside of the current docs, it says you need to have npm and node.js installed. Go to docs directory and run npm install npm start. But what I want to do is just write a Dagger module that does that, just because like, what if I don't have npm, or what if I don't want npm installed on my local machine? This is a really nice use case for Dagger. So let's just try that out and see if it'll work. So ultimately, I think that's what I was doing with this Dagger QA module, but I don't remember. I don't actually remember that. So what I can do is just make a new module. I don't need to commit any of this. I can just play with this for now. So I'll go to the docs directory and I'll make a new module. We'll call it, well, it might be on my docs QA. Let's just get rid of the existing QA stuff that I had in there, and then let's make a new. Let's use Python, and let's use, let's call it QA. Hopefully that works. I don't have Docker running. I just restarted my computer, that's why this is being really funky. Yeah, so it's just getting started. So basically, my module is going to be very simple. All it's going to do is, from the local docs directory, it's going to run these two commands, and it'll serve that up. We'll expose port 3000. So then we'll be able to go to localhost 3000 and see, hopefully, the doc site running locally. Yeah, sometimes when the Docker is still starting up and you try to run Dagger, things get into a weird state. So I just restarted and tried again. Okay, cool. So let's first of all, let's create a virtual environment. I think I went down this pathway last time and ended up putting this in an external directory or something like that. So that I could pass in this docs, any directory with docs in it. But that's okay. This time we'll just try it this way. Okay, so now we installed Dagger, and I just need to reopen this file. Sometimes I need to reopen the whole project in order to get things to work, in order to get like the hints to work. So let's try that. Okay. Did not seem to like that one bit. Because I guess for whatever reason, it's probably because it doesn't think this is a Go project. Or sorry, a Python project. Or maybe it's because I'm in a detached state. I don't know honestly how to get how to get out of this state. So you know what we're gonna do, just because I know, I'm pretty sure this will definitely work, is get rid of that. Get rid of everything we just did. And then go back to the docs directory and initialize the TypeScript SDK. So because I think that TypeScript is the one that has just like the simplest type hints in VS Code. Everything just kind of works. So let's hope that's still true. It is true. So I love that. TypeScript is definitely winning today. Okay, so all we want to do is basically follow this README. And it says from the docs directory, run npm install and npm start. So we want a nice node container. the npm in there. So can we just say latest? Or maybe we should grab like LTS. Is that a thing? LTS Alpine. That seems reasonable. So we'll do from. Okay, so first of all, we'll call a function which is run docs site. And let's go ahead and return a container, because just in case we want to inspect it or anything like that, it's always better to do that. We could also return a service here. Maybe I'll show both. So we're going to do node LTS Alpine. So this just returns node LTS Alpine, and it's going to be a little bit long, so we might as well get it going now. So I'm assuming this has npm installed already. Let's see if that's a thing. But ultimately, what we're going to want to run is an npm install, and then npm start. And we're going to say with exposed port 3000, because that's where it's going to run on localhost. And okay, so we're going to grab the standard out. Grab the standard out from that. Oh shoot, sorry. I also need to mount the right directory. So we have to do with mounted directory, and we want it to be mounted on, like we just call it source, and then directory. So that's going to be an argument into this function. And then we're going to say with workdir source. Sorry, I need to pass in the dir. And I'm passing in just a current working directory, because this is where all of the documentation code is. Okay, fantastic. We might need to actually pass in a higher level directory, and if we do, then that's really, really painful, because there's no way to pass in like relative directories, so you have to pass in the full path, unfortunately. And because I think it's trying to do something from SDK TypeScript for some reason, which I'm not a fan of. Like I don't think this is a good pattern. Like I would love for the docs directory to be like just self-contained and not try to go back out and do some other stuff. So that's something that I think can be improved. But in any case, I think that we can pass in, instead of passing in the dir of that, we can pass in the like this path minus docs, and then we'll say with work dir source docs, right? Something like that. Yeah, like that should work, I think. Let's try that. This is a little bit annoying, but we'll get through it. So all I'm doing here is basically taking the entire repo, mounting that, then executing the command from the docs folder as the current working directory. But it should be able to then traverse back and find the SDK folder, hopefully. Okay, so it says that Docusaurus is running at localhost 3000. I probably wanted to run on 0.0.0 3000 though, because this probably isn't going to work. Yeah, so that's not going to work. But but this is working. So there's a couple things we can do. We can either leave this alone, but the problem is if we leave it alone, like this will never finish. It will never like finish executing, so we'll just be stuck in limbo. So I think in this case, what we want to do is just make this a service instead. Instead of saying return container, we'll say return service. Now, one thing we could have done, I think, is instead of standard out, we can call as service. I think that's the option, because container has a property of as service, which allows you to run it basically, and then forward some ports from from the service to back to your local host. But I'm worried that because this thing never actually like finishes executing, it might just get stuck there. So I think we can just say up, right? Okay. Yeah, I think the last thing is we need this to say 0.0.0.0. It can't just be localhost. So we're almost there. But if we look at npm start, it's Docusaurus. It runs Docusaurus start. I think you can run it on a different host. Let's try that. This might actually just work as is. But instead of saying npm start, we should be able to say like that. Just pass in the parameters like this. I think this worked for me before once. And anyways, the reason we have to do this for anyone who's not aware is when you run something locally, like when we run npm start, docusource start, it'll only listen on localhost. So if you try to access that service from anywhere but localhost, it's not going to respond because it just doesn't know how to respond. So in this case, we're saying, hey, listen on any port, basically. Sorry, not any port, but listen on any address. So any incoming request should be served. That's what that 0.0.0.0 means. However, this is not working for us for some reason. It seems to think that's the path for some reason. Oh, interesting. Interesting. It wants like this extra, I'm not sure what this is to be honest with you, but I feel like I've seen this before. And it wants like this extra dash. Let's try that as well. I think that'll work. And we have docs. So this is perfect. So now we are looking at the docs that are running inside of this Dagger module container. So that's pretty cool. So if you ever run into a project where maybe the installation instructions are simple, where it's like, hey, npm install, do all this stuff, but for whatever reason, like you don't want to or you can't install things like that, I think this is a really nice pattern for that, where you just basically grab the directory of the source code, expose a port, and give it a node runtime, and then you're off to the races. So this is really nice. Now, a couple things to note here. One, unfortunately, the way that this works is there's no way to today to have the type of workflow that you might get with Docker Compose, where you like mount a local directory and you can sync it in real time. So if I make changes to the docs in this local repo, they'll be reflected automatically in my browser. There's no way to do that right now. We're basically it's not supported. There is an open GitHub issue to address this, and I'm really excited for this to be addressed, because once this is supported, I think that we're gonna be able to open up a whole lot of like really interesting use cases for local development workflows. I think I opened this issue. Yeah, so it's add live development support for running Dagger services, and ideally it's similar to like what happens when you run --v. But right now, there's no workaround. There's just no way to do this because we're not able to do the type of syncing that this requires. So one day this will be resolved, and when it is, I think it'll be really cool. But in the meantime, we can still kind of do a development workflow here where if I do want to make changes to the code, I can just stop this service, make my changes, and restart the service. So it's not ideal, but it does get the job done. So now that we have this finally in place, we should be able to review the PR and see what has changed, maybe add some comments. Hmm. And the way I kind of wanted to do this was, first I just want to make sure this is actually looking at the right thing. So custom functions. The better approach is to create one or more Dagger functions. Perfect. So this looks like we're in the right place. So let's just start in the same order that we see this here. And I guess I'll just walk through. Let me just walk through the whole quick start completely from scratch. And if we have any comments to the text, we'll come back to this tab that has the PR open and go from there. So let's go completely back to the beginning. So first thing we're going to do is install the CLI. We already have the CLI installed, so we're not actually going to execute these steps. But basically, if you have Homebrew, you can tap Dagger tap and then install Dagger. You can also use this script. Just be careful. Make sure you like I would actually recommend not passing in this Dagger version. I almost wish we had a version of this that didn't show the Dagger version first, and then one that did, because this is like an optional argument. You don't have to pass this in explicitly. If you don't pass this in explicitly, it's just going to install the latest version of Dagger CLI. I think I'm like 99% sure that's the case because I saw this working earlier. If we go to this other project, yeah, bin US local dir, yeah. So if you don't specify Dagger version, it'll grab the latest version. And I kind of wish that we showed you like the way to do this without specifying the Dagger version, right? Because it says, hey, if you don't have Homebrew installed, or if you want to install a specific version of Dagger, you can run this. But I think it should really say, if you don't have Homebrew installed, run this. If you want to install a specific version of Dagger, then run that, right? And then maybe there's this last one where it talks about using sudo or sudo. So it's just one little nitpick. And I wonder if, I'm not even sure if this file is even included in the PR. It's not. I kind of want to change it, but I don't want to. But it feels like it's a minor thing. I don't want to get too distracted. I also don't want to mess with the code in this branch just yet. I kind of just want to review it as is. So I'll just jot down that I wish we showed how to install with curl separately. So I'll just add a reminder for myself to do that later. So anyways, that's that. So we're good. So we installed the CLI. And once you have the CLI installed, if you run Dagger version, then it'll tell you the current version of Dagger that you're on. So now we're going to move on to this calling your first function in the quick start. I'm not going to read out loud. You can read along if you're interested here. I might read some things out loud. it feels like um, we do forget, like we don't mention that you have to have an OCI compatible runtime locally in order for this to work. We don't mention that anywhere in the quick start. Oh, we do. Sorry, we do mention that. It's in the very first like high level tab of the quick start. So that's good. Okay, great. Yeah. This part seems a little bit misleading, right? Because it says, hey, you only need Dagger CLI installed on your machine. That's not really true. You need Dagger CLI and a container runtime, which we do mention in the next sentence, but it's strange that we say you only need this. We should just say, the tutorial, you need Dagger CLI and a container runtime. So so this is another thing that I want to maybe suggest a change for. Just taking a note for myself. Okay, so let's move back to calling your first function. This whole paragraph feels a little bit too verbose to me. I think this paragraph could be reworked a little bit. But again, I'm in a weird like spot here because like this isn't even up for review in this particular PR, so I kind of just want to focus on the thing that's changing. This one's also a little bit misleading because never mind. I guess it's not misleading. Yeah, but okay. Well, we'll get back to that. So it says, hey, you're not ready to dive in. Call your first function using the following command. So let's just go ahead and call that command and get a feel for things. Cool. So I see hello world. I'm feeling very happy. I've called my first Dagger module. And I've confirmed that Dagger CLI works, Dagger, the container runtime works, everything is good. This takes me to the source code of the module, which kind of gives me a better sense of how all this stuff works and fits together. Yeah. This info block is good. Like I'm glad it's here, but it's a strange. I wish that we had. I wish the example function was hello world, so that we could show that we would invoke it as hello dash world, because we would want kebab's case style. Because right now it's only one word, so it becomes lowercase. But maybe it's not necessarily obvious that it's going to be kebab case. But maybe later on we'll show that kebab case in action. So okay, now we're getting to the part where a big chunk of this new stuff is available. So let's pay special attention to this section. So now it's telling us, hey, check out the help feature of the Dagger CLI. Some of these like syntax highlighting things look a little bit strange to me. I will go ahead and make a note of that in the PR. Like, yeah, it's like inconsistent. I'm not sure if there's anything we can do about that, because it seems to be potentially automatic with whatever like library we're using, but I wouldn't expect any of this stuff to be highlighted like this. So now we're going to call a function with arguments. And it's kind of cool because you can copy it directly from this block. And we see that instead of hello world, it now says bonjour, Dagger Knot. Cool. And then it's going to say use complex types as arguments. So now we're moving on to some of the more complex features. In this case, we're using a different module now. And I think that I would want us to use the same module only because that'll make sure that nobody has to download anything else and the thing will be as fast as possible on all subsequent runs. So I would love for the whole quick start to be just one single module. That's my kind of feedback there. Just from a pure like first impression, like you want things to be as fast as possible, and every subsequent run of a Dagger function is like cached aggressively, so we get a lot of benefits. But when we pull new modules in, like they'll be fast eventually, but the first time you run them, there might be a little bit of a delay. So I would love to see us try to keep as few different modules in the quick start as possible. So that's some feedback I'll add there too. Yeah, Yeah, it's also a little bit strange that we're using like a repo as the dir. Like this is awesome. This is awesome. Like it's awesome that we can do this, but I think it's incredibly confusing for someone who's brand new to Dagger because like calling this a directory is like is a bit of a stretch in the sense that like it's only a directory because this is a Git repo, right? So yeah, I don't know. That's just another thought there. But anyways, let's run it and see what happens. Yeah, I mean, for whatever it's worth, like this module is incredibly fast, so I don't think that it's a big deal that it's a different one. And we do tell you that hey, the directory could be a local directory or a remote Git reference. So we link out to the GitHub page to show you that you're looking at the same thing. Okay. This is potentially strange. Copy. Yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this. It just feels like that particular sentence, the last sentence, just feels a little bit too. All right, cool. So we made it through one. of these files. Let's move on to the next one. So we had our first taste of Dagger functions. Now we're going to build a binary with a function. And this is the directories file. And I'm not sure. Oh yeah, we do have some. We have a couple of tiny changes here. So let's just walk through this whole thing and see what we think. Okay, so then it gives us another function to run, go builder. So you copy and paste it. Project argument of directory. I think we should also describe what the args argument does. So once it finishes, it's going to say directory evaluated. This means the build succeeded, the build directory was returned, but how do you use it? So that's cool. I mean, I like that. I think it's a nice way to introduce a concept. Yeah, I have an objection to this again. Like, it's important to, like, saying that inside of a like call out box is redundant to me, and I think that less is more. Like, all excessive words in my perfect world are just cut out. There's no excess. So it's just a small little thing. But unfortunately, this is not up for debate at this moment, so I'm going to make another note for myself to review this later. But this is important to realize. Like this is a very magical concept that we're building a Go application without having Go installed or Git installed or anything installed locally on my local machine. So saying Dagger host is a very confusing term. It's unclear what that means. Right. So like, in fact, like I don't even know what Dagger host means anymore, especially in this context. I think the more appropriate term here would be like Dagger CLI host, perhaps. I don't know. I also don't like this. But some of the stuff is just me nitpicking. So we built a binary. Now we're going to move on to function chaining. Oh, so this is function chaining is what's going to help us understand how we can now read like the directory that we returned. This whole sentence just like reads very strangely, and also we have an inconsistent use. Like in some places we call out, like we make these side comments with parentheses, but then other places we have it with these little, I don't know what to call it, dashes. Yeah, it just reads a little bit confusing to me. So now it asks us to rerun this with entries. But this one isn't cached for some reason. And this is starting to get a little bit painful, right? Like I just ran that command. I expected it to just, yeah, do that, but it doesn't. Yeah, I think saying Dagger host here is a little bit confusing. So now we're going to export the binary that we built inside of that container to my local directory, or to a local directory called my Dagger build. And then if I go into that directory, yeah, this is pretty painful. This is a little bit painful. Okay, cool. So it says true. Now if I go to my Dagger build, I see there's a thing called Dagger. I can call it version. the issue here is this is not going to work because I think that it was built inside of like Linux and I'm running on a Mac. So I think this might only work with Linux. So I think that we should at least address that somewhere. Oh man, I don't know what the heck just happened. Just said yes to everything. The final export example only. Final export example only works with Linux because we're building. So this thing builds a Go binary for Linux inside of a container and then exports it. And when I try to execute it from my Mac, it obviously doesn't work. So I think we should either denote that here somehow, or we should allow people to pass in their like architecture as an argument so that they can get the correct binary out. The last thing it tells you is to run functions to see all the available functions that a given module knows how to do. It also tells you how to use help. So I think that's cool. I think it's good that it helps you try all the commands out. So that feels good. Moving on to build a container with a function. This is called containers. This one had a few changes, so let's pay more attention to this. So now we're moving on to a different module. This is Wolfie, and it allows us to call a function that installs package, I guess, or builds packages. I love that we're showing how to use terminal, but I think that it makes more sense to describe this as it's fine, I guess. So now it tells us do everything else the same, but chain terminal to the end. So that'll allow us to open up a terminal inside of the container that we just built. And we can run Python 3. It's really cool. And it says, you may experience visual bugs. Yeah, I think this is a really cool, I think this is a good quick start one because container is like one of the most powerful types. So walking through everything that it's able to do like this, I think is really nice. But I'm not sure I love this. Just looks a little bit, I mean, if I paste it, does it even work? Probably. One thing I have noticed though is like, yeah, it should work. That's great. Just like a little bit annoying to read. Anyway, so now we're going to publish. We're just showing off some other functions of containers. Now we're going to publish this container to registry, to ttl.sh. I think it's really cool that we show. I think it's really cool that we show this kind of full end-to-end life cycle. We published an image, now we pulled it. It's pretty cool. I think this is a really cool example. It's so much better than the previous one. So let's make a note of that. So that's great. Moving on to Daggerize a project. I don't actually want the rich diff. This one's called Daggerize. And this just walks you through starting a new project from scratch. So and I think that would be nice if maybe you link to the Daggerverse. So now we're going to go all the way. We're going to clone this repo, this example repo, and we're going to Daggerize it. I think this is awesome. I think this is really cool. In fact, this might even be something I just point people to from the get-go. Because if this is as good as I think it's about to be, I think this is such a nice way to just learn, like organically, all the different pieces of Dagger. Like I almost wish this was the first thing we did, but because it's almost like this like super quick start. There's like the quick start, and there's just like the instant start, right? And this feels like it because like you get ready to go repo, or rather run a bunch of commands and see this thing in action. So, anyways, we'll Dagger init. Oh, I guess we do show you dependencies later, or from Daggerverse later. So maybe that's okay. So it says, hey, go ahead and install this Go module that Kyle wrote, and take a look at Dagger.json. You'll see it now has that Golang module. I don't know if doing all these git commits is strictly necessary, but it's okay. Lastly, it says, hey, go ahead and call this build container function from the Go Builder module. I think this is a really, really cool example, especially because like it never actually, it still does not have you write any code. This is basically Daggerizing a project using existing modules without having to write any code yourself. You're just basically configuring the system. I think that's awesome. This is really cool. And we can now just run this. Yeah, I think this is such a good example. I'm just gonna send some good vibes to that part. Okay. Let's move on to write your first function. So this is custom function. I don't know, maybe it's just me, but it feels like these two sentences are basically saying the same thing. Creating your own Dagger functions enables you to transform your workflows into structured, discrete, and composable units with clear inputs and outputs, with all the benefits of using a native programming language. By creating your own Dagger function, you can express more complex workflows and operations by reusing Dagger functions created by others and connecting them together using the programming language you're most comfortable with. Cool. So now we get into the part where there's 3 different versions, depending on the language you choose. Let's start with Go. And we're going to go ahead and install another dependency. and we're going to say, so we installed Wolfie, and then we're going to update the existing template, and we're going to make a new function. So I really don't like this style of naming parameters. I wish it just said source and args, but that's a fight I'll pick another day. So we grab a container, and then we return dag.goling. This is like a little bit hard to type out. This is just like silly. Is this really the best way to get like a random number from Go? Maybe it is. But this is like really, really hard to read and type. So um, okay. Anyways, we typed that in. The build and publish function accepts 2 arguments. Invokes Wolfie, calls a container, invokes Golang, builds a container, and then publishes it to registry. I just like I'm gonna suggest that we put this in because it's really hard to read and write. go ahead and put in the same number of zeros there. Okay. Let's go ahead and call the function. That returns a container, which we can then enter into. Oh, oops. It's a bit strange, but I think this is also a great example, except just the formatting is a little bit tough for me, especially if you're typing this out. I think it's really hard. Otherwise, okay, last but not least, it says find functions on the Daggerverse. But this file wasn't changed at all, so there may not be much to say there. There's a conclusion file, I think, that was also changed, perhaps. Okay, but anyways, find functions on the Daggerverse. This is just an introduction to the Daggerverse. That's kind of cool. Play a game of YAML evaders. Let's try that. Actually, let's make sure all these work while we're here. I'm a little bit worried. Fortunately, it does not seem to actually work anymore. So I'm going to file a bug about that because we should either get it to work or we should remove it from this doc. Oh, damn. I guess it does work. Or it kind of works. I'm going to go ahead and delete that issue because this actually does work. It just takes a while to start up. It's also like so awesome. Um, okay, but now I just want to play the elevators. Is this going to become a YAML invaders stream? Oh man. Oh, I gotta move. I gotta move my little Dagger SDK. Oh man, I got shot up. This is so cool. Um, okay, let's get back to business here. We're gonna scan an image for vulnerabilities. I'm just gonna check out all the ones that exist, just to make sure like they look okay. Yeah, Termcast is really cool. Cool. Awesome. It says go to the Dagger CLI reference, go types on TypeScript and FAQ. So CLI reference, go Python TypeScript. Ask questions. This is fantastic. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and submit this review. Some feedback. So there we have it. I finished that review. This was a lot of reading, a lot of writing, a little bit of coding, but we're slowly working on making these docs better. So um, maybe a little bit of a slower one today, but I knocked off a big item from my list. I appreciate it. Anyone hanging out.